Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to be here and to listen to this seminar during your lunch hour. Today, we're going to be looking at the importance of storytelling in marketing, and hopefully you'll find it interesting and educational, and I'm sure a lot of you already understand what the value of storytelling is, so hopefully it can cement some of the ideas that you already have. Okay, a little bit about me. My name's Joe. I'm an editor at Southerly. Southerly is a creative content marketing agency based in London, but the work we do is with clients all over the world. So we've got clients in Spain, in the Netherlands, in Sweden. But today's webinar, as I've said, is about producing stories, and I spend a lot producing content that is designed to tell stories from the point of view of organizations. The aim of this is to engage audiences, is to bolster brand reputation, and ultimately reap financial rewards. I'm presenting this topic today because I've seen the benefits of storytelling firsthand. And I know that by understanding who you're trying to reach, and by having a firm grasp of the messages you want to communicate, you can attract customers and stand out when compared to your competitors. Like a lot of content marketers, I started my career in journalism. I'd say probably over half of the content marketers I've met followed a similar route to me. So I've written about pretty much everything in my career. I've done articles on recycling, on accounting, on football, on finance, on the history of Portsmouth, why people in the UAE love driving fast cars, wind turbines, and natural gas infrastructure in Tanzania. So it's pretty varied. But the one thing that ties them all together is that the best way to present information is by telling compelling stories. People tend to engage with stories because they are built on a foundation that they're already familiar with. So there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, and when done properly, the content is laid out in a way that ensures the reader understands what is going on. Even if they've never previously encountered the subject before. So that's our job as storytellers, is to hook people in and engage them, even if they don't previously have any experience with what we're discussing. I moved into content marketing because it allows people like me, creative writers or creative designers, to come up with ideas and to make topics that might on the surface be quite dry. So insurance, for example, makes it engaging and interesting, and that's our job, is to tell these stories that make subjects that might not be quite as tantalizing as things I've previously done, like say in football, but by telling the right story in the right way and to the right people, anything can be made interesting. So today we're going to cover off a few things on our webinar. We're going to start by looking at why stories are important, why they should be part of your marketing mix, and then we'll move on to have a look at how to structure a good brand story, get into grips with what you want to achieve and how you can attain those objectives, how to keep people interested and engaged throughout the story, regardless of what it is, and why everything you do should be supported by a robust set of brand guidelines and an overarching strategy that links into your business's overall goals. And then we'll end by taking a look at examples of companies that are particularly adept at incorporating storytelling into their marketing, and we'll move on to a final Q&A session. So if there's anything you want to say, feel free to send us a message on our Twitter account, and we'll get it answered if we can. This session is being recorded. And you will be sent the presentation afterwards. So feel free to share it with anyone you think might be interested once it's finished. And as I say, at the end there'll be a chance to ask questions. And if we can't answer them, we'll try and get back to you quickly with some valid information. So with that little intro out the way, let's get started on the webinar. So why are stories important? Well, stories have been used for thousands of years as a means of relaying information, giving guidance, and ultimately bringing people together. They tend to have a beginning, middle, and an end, and they generally conclude with some kind of resolution that ties up loose ends, provides a solution, or delivers a specific message. So the end of the story is basically the reason why the story has been constructed in the first place. Telling stories is one of the most effective ways of getting consumers to listen to what you have to say. And this is it's a tried and tested model, and research really does back it up. So 92% of consumers say they want brands to make advertisements feel more like a story. 68% say that content that informs and educates is valuable to them. And messages delivered as stories can be up to 22 times more memorable than just stating facts. Stories that have a formula that is familiar and they therefore appeal to people on an emotional level. So if you just hit them with facts, figures, and stats, it's harder to remember because they've got no context to go around with it. So to tell a story effectively, it needs to be properly structured. And with regard to most marketing content, obviously there are some variables here, but on the vast majority, there are 4 steps that you have to consider when you're telling a story. The initial one is the setback, which is where you introduce the problem. The second one is the conflict, which is where you acknowledge the customer's conflict or any reservations they may have about the product or about what you're selling them. Number 3 is you have to offer them a compromise, such as like a tempting price or a product that is superior to what you already know. And then step 4, you declare success and you tell the consumer how their life will be better, and they ultimately agree with you, hopefully. So one example of this is Seal It Bang. So if you're not from the UK, you may not be familiar with this, but this was a pretty major cleaning product in the early 2000s. The adverts were very, very simple stories, and they were very, very brazen stories as well. So the initial setup, they told you what your problem was. It's that your kitchen isn't clean. And then it acknowledges the consumer conflict, which is that you don't have a lot of time to spend cleaning it, and even if you do have the time, you would prefer not to. Then it gives you the compromise, which is that the product is very powerful and therefore it makes the cleaning more efficient, thereby saving you time. And then you end up with success, which is a clean kitchen and it hasn't taken up your entire day. Another brand that does this on a more cinematic level is Domino's. So Domino's, in this example here, it introduces the problem. So the guy in this clip has ordered a pizza, but he needs to get home to get it because it's going to be delivered soon. The conflict is that he has no way to get home other than by running. So, and then he keeps coming across obstacles throughout the advert. So he has to cross the road and there's no time for him to do it. And then he ends up meeting a girl that he wants to talk to, but he realizes he hasn't got time to properly discuss anything with her. And then the compromise here is that the girl gives him his number, so gives him her number, so he's going to call her later, and that means he still gets time to go home and pick up the pizza. The success is he gets home right in time, and he ends up with a girl's phone number as well. So a pretty successful day for this lad. Okay, then you have to know what you want to achieve. So when you're telling a story, you need to convey your brand's personality. You need to engage with people on an emotional level. So they need to feel something, and then you want to make them feel as though they are part of the story. So you want them to look at the story and be able to think, I could be in this situation as well. This is how it benefits me. People enjoy having emotional connections with anything, be it a football team, be it a brand, be it I don't know, a scenario. People like to see themselves reflected in the stories that they hear. So we inherently put ourselves in boxes and give ourselves labels because it's a way to bond, and it makes you feel part of something bigger. So say you're a big fan of a rugby club, or you really like a specific TV show or film franchise. These act as shortcuts to establishing or revealing personality traits. They tend to come with numerous insinuations and connotations that can help you build a picture of what a person is like based on past experiences and educated guesses. So you don't really need to know anything about this person to start off with, but you can make assumptions. And then this is the overall philosophy of brand storytelling. And then when it comes to campaign storytelling, you want to bring people in, you want to make them feel involved. You want them to associate with your brand, develop a positive opinion of it, and subsequently you want them to commit to a purchase, or whatever it is your particular marketing aim is. It might be to attract subscribers or to get people to go somewhere at a specific time. Ultimately, the goal is to engage and to encourage people to most often spend their money on whatever you are offering. And then you want to encourage them to come back time and time again in the future. And you want them to tell other people about your brand and say why they should be interested in what you're saying. So overall, you basically want people to associate with your brand and develop a positive opinion of everything you say. So before you can incorporate storytelling into whatever marketing or advertising you're doing, you need to set the groundwork. And this involves understanding who you want to reach, how best to reach them, because not every story will work for every individual. You'll also want to consider the challenges they need addressing. So what are their pain points? And you have to create content based on that, giving them a resolution. At Southerly, what we do in nearly every piece of marketing content we produce is we build personas first. So this requires us to make assumptions, to utilize research and anecdotal evidence, and ultimately create an image of the type of person that we are trying to reach. Once the audience has been established, it's important to figure out how best to reach these people and what particular piece of content they will engage with. In brand storytelling, we want to tell clients or potential employees even why they should want to work with you. And then you need to tell the brand story, but also showcase personality, approach, employees, and ambitions. You need to tell people why you are different to other people and why those differences make you superior. And in campaign storytelling, the aim is to get people interested in a particular project or product or campaign. You've got to make them take notice by appealing to them directly. So get them emotionally invested, give them reasons to come back again and again. You can tell stories in any number of ways. So at Southerly, things we do, we write blogs, we mock up memes, we design pictures, we create videos, we design GIFs, we do voiceovers, we make podcasts. And these are all entirely valid means of content. They just reach different people, they target different audiences, and they're consumed in different ways. So they all have their pros and cons. But everything you do needs to build a picture of not only what your company is trying to achieve, but how the company operates. So everything you produce must showcase your personality and do everything you can to stand out from the competition. Maintaining and establishing a brand personality and a brand identity means being consistent across all channels and being fully aware of how you want to present your brand. So this means being consistent with regards to your chosen tone of voice. It means understanding and knowing your audience, and it means establishing a personality that appeals to the people you want to reach. You have to be unique, and you have to stay true to your overall messages and objectives. So there's a lot of groundwork that goes in before you can tell a story, but it will ultimately make the message far more effective. Telling stories is an ongoing process, and being consistent dictates how people will interact with you. So the more you tell stories that connect, the more likely it is people will involve themselves with your brand in the long term, which is obviously what you'd like to achieve. One particular brand that is very good at this is Red Bull. So Red Bull it famously is an energy drink, but you wouldn't know that necessarily just by seeing the work they present through their marketing and advertising and overall branding. So what they do is they focus on targeting audiences through sports and events rather than trying to sell you the product directly. They're very much associated with adrenaline-fueled sports like skiing or flying planes incredibly fast or cliff diving. And they tell their stories through website, they tell their stories very, very clearly on social media, and also through the events and the athletes that they sponsor. The energy drink itself is very rarely mentioned. Instead, the focus has been on developing the brand as very cool and making it desirable to the target audience. And it's been incredibly effective. Another brand that does this to a similar extent is Nike or Nike. So there's a focus on consistently producing content that makes the brand seem attractive to those who are big fans of fitness or enjoy being outdoors or have some kind of adventurous personality. Everything is focused on being trendy, but without ever going over the top. So the Nike logo is nearly always visible in the collateral that they produce, but the primary emphasis is always on the people, so which are generally athletes, and the surroundings, which is more often than not nowadays, it tends to be urban environments. The market and advertisement budgets are massive for Nike. And as a result, the content is often very cinematic, which makes the brand seem even more stylish and even more slick. And this is something that not all companies have the capacity to do, but they're a great one to learn from. Brand credibility is incredibly important, and this should be the underlying objective of any marketing or branding efforts. This can be achieved in numerous ways. So by being original, by being distinctive, by being consistent, producing content that's of high quality, producing work that can then subsequently be recommended by key influencers, either in your industry or on specific channels, by providing a superior product or service, and by living up to, and if possible, exceeding promises and expectations. So the best way to stand out from the competition is by being better over and over again in every way possible. But of course, this takes time to establish. You need to be consistent, and you need to keep pushing through, even when it looks like perhaps your storytelling isn't getting the results you want. Because in the long term, these things do pay off. Okay, so it's absolutely crucial that storytelling never replaces quality or authenticity. If you don't have the capacity to deliver on work or are unable to back up any claims that you make throughout your stories, then the story itself will not be beneficial, because storytelling should complement what you're already doing. It should never paper over the cracks of a poor product. The key with storytelling is to showcase what you are doing well and why people should take notice of what you're doing. It shouldn't be telling stories just for the sake of doing so. Oh, and that brings us to the end of the presentation. So I'll leave it on this slide. Thanks for taking the time to attend the webinar. Hopefully some of it will have been useful in your content creation efforts going forwards, or at the very least shown that you are already on the right track. So if you do have any questions, feel free to send a tweet to Southerly Comms' Twitter account. We've already had 3 questions in, so I'll answer it now. Okay, what is your favorite medium for storytelling? Personally, I'd say it is the written word, and that's partly because I'm a journalist by trade, and I've always used language to tell stories. But I think writing is a great way to structure a story in a way that is relatable to the reader, and words give you a lot of room to build up a picture of what you're trying to tell. And I also think you can embed a lot of your personality in how you write. So different people are incredibly distinctive with what they produce, even though they're using the same words over and over again. You can always tell who is writing, and I quite like that aspect. But obviously, that's not to say that other mediums don't work well. They can all be effective in their own way. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, for example, because I travel a lot. My commute to work is fairly long. And I think podcasts are the perfect medium for when you're traveling about or when you're on a train. So sometimes some people don't like reading when they're on public transport. I'm one of those people. I can't handle it. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I feel that's a pretty good medium for getting across information in a concise way. Okay, why is brand credibility so important in relation to storytelling? Okay. I think I've slightly touched on this earlier, but no harm in elaborating. So brands that I mentioned earlier, so Nike, for example, they tell their stories through people, and one of the reasons they do this and why the approach has been so successful is because, well, I think it's because consumers like you and me, we believe what Nike is saying in their advertisements. We believe in the image they're portraying, and we understand that that is what the brand is truly about. So there's a personality there, and we get on board with the personality. We understand what Nike's trying to say, and we want to be involved with what they're saying. That if a brand is credible, consumers will believe that you have the capacity to deliver on promises, which is incredibly important. That means you'll ultimately sell more, which is the long-term goal. Because if people believe in your brand and have faith in what you're doing, they'll be happy to recommend you to other people. And this can be just as effective as an expensive marketing campaign or advertisement campaign, especially with social media being so prevalent. If they've got enough followers on Twitter and they say, "Oh, I've really enjoyed the service from such and such a brand," that's free advertising. It's costing you nothing other than being credible over and over again. Okay, what exactly do I mean by personas and how can they help? Okay, all right. Creating personas, it is a chance to take a detailed look at the sort of people you want to attract with your product or services. So you can build a picture of the person you're trying to reach by analyzing data you already have, as well as looking at external trends and research, and add all this together, and it builds a picture of the person that you're trying to reach. What you're trying to figure out is if there are common themes, or if there are particular types of messaging that will help you reach these people. So, for example, do they tend to be a certain age, as we saw with Red Bull's marketing? It's people between 18 to 35. That's their core demographic. Do consumers prefer particular mediums? So do they prefer content via podcasts? Do they prefer emails? Do they prefer everything to go up on social media? So by refining and filtering in this way, you make your messages far more focused and personalized. So it means you can target specific people. By having recognizable personas, it gives everyone in your organization a clear idea of who they're creating content for and why they are taking particular approaches. So personas ensure that your content works, basically, because without them, you won't know exactly how to target the right people. You won't know who these people are, but you won't know what content they want to consume as well. So even though this process involves refining and involves streamlining your content, it's always better to aim for a smaller number of engaged people that you want to interact with, rather than just firing off a generic message to as many people as possible. So you want to hit people that are more likely to engage with you, or who already want to work with you, who want your services, who want your products, rather than just hitting random people, because that very rarely works. Creating personas can also contribute quite significantly to brand credibility, because they show that you know who you're targeting. They show you know who your audiences are and how to produce the right messages. And that's it all builds up, and it's all incredibly effective. So yeah, thank you again for coming to listen to this. It's taken shorter than we expected, so hopefully you'll get a bit more of your lunch break back. Yeah, and feel free to send any messages on Twitter or to one of our email addresses, and we'll get back to you if you have any other questions.